Hello, and welcome to another episode of Social Workers Rise. It is your host, Catherine, here. Somewhere along the way, social workers have lost our identity, and we have just turned into a profession where we're just doing therapy. And I disagree with this. If you have joined social work just to do therapy, you are in the wrong profession, my friend. You have selected the wrong degree. So we're going to be talking about what is the difference between a social work degree and other therapy-focused degrees, and why does this matter? Why is it a big deal if we are having an identity crisis as a profession? And what can we do about it? What can you do today to do your part for yourself so that you're not experiencing this identity crisis and you are 100% crystal clear on what it is that a social work degree does and what makes it different than other therapy-focused degrees. Let's hop into it. If you are new here, my name is Catherine. I have been the Social Workers Rise podcast host since 2020 when I started the podcast. I've been social working since 2009. Save you the math, that's about 17 years now. And I've done so much within social work. It's amazing, which is why I love this degree, the versatility of it, and the way that the education prepares you for so many different settings outside of therapy. Because I don't know if you know this about me, but even though I'm a therapist now, I never intended to be a therapist. When I first started out in 2009 and I graduated, my heart was set on macro. And that's what I did. That's what I did when I first started out. I got involved in policy, in creating policy formation, in working alongside legislators. I've worked in settings such as affordable housing. I've done community outreach. I've organized resource fairs. I've worked as the director or coordinator of an after-school program. I've also done community education in schools, done presentations, and also I have done the clinical work. So a lot of my career was spent in the medical field. I've been out in the community doing home visits, looking at how all of the different systems impact our clients. I currently provide supervision. I have published a couple books in order to help the field of social work just gain a little bit more organization and more clarity, and just creating tools and resources and courses that help make life easier for social workers, because that is my role here. The whole point of starting the Social Workers Rise podcast is to remind you as a social worker how freaking awesome you are and the value that you bring, even when you can't see it. Because I know that there was a time when I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling less than, I was feeling kind of lost in my career, and I needed this reminder. So hopefully this podcast gives you some direction, some clarity, and just a little bit of motivation on who you are and why you chose this career. Let's remind you of that. So I do want to give you actionable tools. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is why this is a problem, what's happening, what is it that I'm seeing from my perspective, and give you tools that you can take and use today. I will also prelude that I am based in California. So some of the things I'm going to talk about are California specific, but a lot of things also resonate out nationwide and maybe even worldwide. For the record, I do love my fellow therapists, the LMFTs, the counselors, the psychiatrists. A lot of people do amazing work, and there's absolutely no way that we can effectively serve our clients as social workers if we are not also utilizing those therapy-focused folks as well, right? So I do want to be clear on that this is not an us versus them, but this is a, hey, what's different about each of us and where are our strengths and how do we tap into that? So this topic has been simmering in my mind for a long time, and it really came about this week. I was having conversations with social workers, and a lot of social workers Even people who are licensed clinical social workers, people who have their DSW, their doctorate of social work, they really were unclear on what the big deal is about the differences between a social work degree and a therapy focused degree. And this is an ethical conversation that we must have if we're going to be upholding the integrity of the profession, if we're going to continue to have high standards of practice, if we're going to be continuing to engage in responsible and constructive criticism of what's going on. And we must continue to actively contribute to the field's reputation and prevent unauthorized practice within social work. And that is taken directly from our NASW Code of Ethics, Section 5.1. You can read it for yourself. I'll put the link in the show notes. This is an ethical challenge that we are faced with right now. Yes, I take this very seriously. There's 3 problems that I see with us having a social work identity crisis in the profession. Number 1, when we don't know who we are or what sets us apart, our career suffers. We end up shrinking ourselves. We miss job opportunities that we are probably qualified, but we talk ourselves out of it because we don't have that confidence anymore. We're feeling less than because we see all of these other therapy degrees and they've been trained in all of these different modalities and doing all the things. And we're over here with what we call, a quote, general social work degree. And it makes us feel less than. It makes us feel like we're not as competent in therapy as maybe some of our peers would be, as far as with an LMFT or maybe a counselor who their entire degree was focused on diagnosing and therapy interventions, right? And we might even start to feel stuck in these roles. A lot of times coming out of grad school, I hear people talk about how they don't know what to do. They don't know what the options are for social work. They think they need to work in a government agency, in a nonprofit, or do therapy. And if they don't want to do any of those things, they might end up leaving the field because we feel stuck. We don't know what our options are. And we're not talking about the breadth of possibilities that we have as social workers. One of my most popular posts on Instagram is 100 jobs that you can do with a social work degree. And when you sign up for the email list, I automatically send that to you. So if that's something that you want, if you want to know more about what the possibilities are with a social work degree, just sign up for the email list. It makes it super helpful. I'll just send you a PDF of it and it can help you with the job search. Okay. So first problem is we end up shrinking ourselves and we don't fulfill our full potential as a social worker. The second problem with this identity crisis is that it creates a public misunderstanding and a misrepresentation of who we are as social workers and what we do. We don't only take children from homes in CPS, right? Like that is not what we do. In my entire 17 years of career, I've never worked with CPS, nor do I want to. It's not my calling. I fully respect you if you do, because that is hard, difficult work. So if we're truly working to expand the awareness of the value that social workers bring and what we do outside of CPS, then we really need to get clear on our own identity. We as individuals need to feel confident speaking up about why we are different, how we don't only do child protection services and we don't only do therapy. There's so much more. And a lot of times clients can struggle with this understanding and the ways that we help. I know throughout my career, especially in the medical setting, when I would say, "Hi, I'm a social worker," people would get nervous and say, I haven't done anything wrong. Nobody's abusing me. And I'm like, well, that's good. But let's talk about other ways that we can help. And once I explained my role there, you could visibly see in their body the relaxation, the tenseness leave their body once they realize I'm not there to get them in trouble. I'm there to help. I'm there to provide a different perspective. I'm not there to provide therapy and talk about your past right now. I'm here to look at these systems around this person and how do we maximize their strengths in order to help them to be better, to succeed, to accomplish their goals. It's not only in therapy, but it's the whole system, the whole unit that we're dealing with as social workers. It's, for example, therapists are going to be really great with, let's talk about your anxiety. Where does this come from? Let's diagnose it. Let's work through it. Let's give you coping tools. Compared to a social worker, if you're coming up with a social worker and you have anxiety, the social worker is going to take a different perspective and say something to the extent of like, let's understand how your environment, your access to resources, how past trauma, how current trauma, and how all of these systems are truly contributing to anxiety, and intervene on these systems as well, right? Let's bring in family members. Let's talk about the school system. Is there anything that we can do to help your child with the education that's causing your anxiety, right? So it's not just diagnosing and coping tools, but it's looking at the whole system, and that's powerful. The third issue that I see with us having an identity crisis in social work is if we don't know who we are, it makes it very easy for other industries, other professions to define our roles and to keep us stuck in their box that benefits them. It creates an opportunity for people to create policy barriers, to advocate against us, to keep our voices low, and to keep us in that box and say, they're just like everybody else. This makes it so much more difficult for us to find jobs, for us to be able to communicate our value, for us to really maximize the impact that we're having with our clients. And I'll give you some examples. In 2023, there was a push by NASW California for title protection in California, meaning that anyone who works as a social worker, who has a title of a social worker, must have a social work degree. This is to help protect the integrity of the profession, make sure that people are not falsely leading the clients that, yes, I am in fact a social worker. Instead, it's like, oh, you have a title of a social worker, but you don't actually have a social work degree or training. That's very misleading and it's misrepresentation of the profession. So NASW California has for a long time been trying to advocate for this. I went up to Sacramento during my lobby days, advocated for this when I was in grad school back in 2015, 2014, a long time ago. So this was another round where we're trying to get title protection. Currently, about 37 states in the United States have title protection for social worker. So this is not something new or crazy. And a lot of times when I talk about it with other people in other states, they're kind of like, it's a no-brainer. We've had title protection for social work for years, but it's been a problem in California. And one of the big advocates against us getting title protection for social workers is the LMFT organization. In their letter that they wrote as part of their advocacy against title protection for social worker, they use the reasoning that social worker is a commonly used term throughout California. Again, diminishing the work that we do, make it seem less than. And furthermore, I heard a LMFT say this week that anyone who does social work is a social worker. And I disagree, because just because you do the work, it doesn't mean that you have been adequately trained in that work. For example, I can call myself a professional trainer. That doesn't mean that I am actually qualified to do professional training for anybody. It can lead to harm. Like at first it might be fine, but eventually over time, people can get hurt. It's very important that we are able to voice what it is that we're doing, what it is that makes us different, and why we have this unique role. Because if we don't, other people are going to do it for us, and it's not going to be for our benefit. It's going to be for their benefit. So here's the truth. Social workers can do therapy, but it's not all that we do. We can do CPS. It's not all we do. If therapy is all you want, then social work is not the right degree for you. There's plenty of other great therapy degrees out there. And the strength of our degree is in the diversity that our role brings. You know, a lot of social workers think their employer's insurance has them covered. But here's the thing. That policy is really there to protect the organization, not you. That's why I always recommend having your own coverage with a trusted organization such as HPSO. Their professional liability insurance is designed for social workers, and it follows you wherever you work. It's peace of mind you just can't put a price on. Check them out at hpso.com/SWRISE. Hey, social workers, are you looking for clinical supervision or hoping to offer it? Check out RISE Directory. It's the national hub connecting associate social workers with licensed clinical supervisors, making it super easy to find your right match in your state. Head over to risedirectory.com and see how it can help you grow in your career. So what's the difference between a social work degree and a therapy-focused degree? Therapy-focused degrees, meaning licensed marriage and family therapist, counselors, those degrees are micro-focused. They're focused on clinical diagnosing and treatment in the therapy room, in the therapy space, which is needed. I mean, Lord knows we need therapists right now. Very much needed. They do great work there. The difference, though, is with a social work degree is we're trained on all the different levels, on micro, meso, and macro levels. We have specific education on macro systems, on social justice and advocacy, on person and environment, on policy formation, policy advocacy, meso, working with groups, community resources, as well as micro, as well as the therapy space, as well as clinical interventions. They all work together. None of these areas are in silo. And just to kind of point out, there is a reason that you must have an LCSW supervised social workers for more than half of your clinical hours in California. Some states, the LCSW has to supervise the social workers associates for all of their hours. Like they're not even allowed to be supervised by other therapy people because there is such a difference. Meanwhile, at least in California, LCSW can supervise all of the hours for LMFTs. And so I really want to drive this home that our degree is much more broad than the therapy specific degrees. Micro level practice, we're going to be working directly with individuals, helping them cope with their situation. This might look like jobs like case management, therapy, providing community resources, etc. Meso level practice is working with groups instead of individual clients. And this can be working with community groups. This can be working with therapy groups, a lot of different groups in this particular area. And the macro level practice, this is where we're really going to lead and establish the social change aspect of social work. We're working on a large scale of organizing, policy change, taking needs assessments in the communities, administration. Social workers share a commitment to promoting the social welfare, helping people of all backgrounds overcome whatever it is that they need help overcoming, their unique challenges. We advocate for social and economic justice for everybody in the community. And this helps us embody a professional code of ethics. And advocacy is part of the code of ethics as a social worker. So we cannot separate the micro and the macro. They're all connected. A lot of times I'll point out in my supervision meetings how one client is experiencing struggles with this particular area, and we'll reflect that back into how the macro policy is directly influencing that individual, right? All connected. So here's what we do. Here's the call to action is I want you today, right now, to practice explaining what makes you different as a social worker from other degrees. Once you're able to put this into your own words, you're going to have a much better understanding of why it is that you got the degree and how it benefits you. Practice this, because at first it's going to feel probably pretty awkward and you'll probably stumble over your words, and that's okay. It's okay, because eventually we want you to be able to answer this question anywhere that you are, right? So if you're meeting a new client, oh, what's your role as a social worker? What do you do? Are you going to take my kid? No, I'm not going to take your kid. Please we want you to keep your child. But this is what I do, right? Or if you go into a job interview and they ask you that question, why do you feel that you're the person for this role? You'll say, because I have a social work degree. And here's why that matters. So practice being really confident about it and what sets you apart from other therapy focused degrees, right? Second, I want you to really pay attention to the leadership in our profession, in our government, in your place of employment, on licensing boards. Really pay attention to see, is this person going to represent my best interest as a social worker? Are they going to represent my client's best interests in the struggles that they're going through? Really take a step back and look at who it is that's running for office, who it is that you're voting for, and see if they're going to advocate for you. If you have questions still, reach out to that person. Have conversations, talk with your colleagues about what it is that's going on, about your concerns. See if there's any substance there, see if there's anything, see what you're missing, and ensure your voice is heard. That's part of the ethics too, is that we must be advocating for social workers and for our clients. We must be working to maintain the integrity of this work, of this organization. So do not let people silence you. Do not be intimidated. Do not be manipulated. If you are, that's okay. It happens, but don't stay there, right? Talk to somebody else in your social circle, your colleagues, your friends who do have a strong voice, and really work on that and really practice it and really develop that self-confidence and that self-awareness that you are a social worker, and that is amazing. So if this episode helped you at all, if it helped to provide some clarity for you, if you have any questions, reach out to me. If you like this episode, go ahead and share it with a colleague. We're not about gatekeeping information around here. Go ahead, open up your podcast app right now. Make sure that you have subscribed or followed the podcast so you'll get notified of future podcasts. Share it with a friend. If you're interested in that list of 100 jobs that I mentioned earlier, go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter and I'll automatically send that out to you. Lastly, if you need additional resources for clinical social work, I do have a couple resources on my website. There's some courses that are there. There's the books that I have on Amazon, especially if you're in supervision, if you're a clinical supervisor, or if you are in supervision. My resources are specifically for social workers. However, a lot of the other mental health degrees also use the resources too and find them helpful. So, judge for yourself, see what it is that would benefit you most. And until then, I'll talk to you soon.